Hello, I'm Alan Safran, the CEO and co-founder of Saga Education. We're a nonprofit that was established a little over 10 years ago to help the country get tutoring right. I'll be speaking for about 7 minutes, and then I've got three segments of this call with some real talented experts to present to you. I think I will introduce them now if you'd all come off camera. So in the first segment, you'll have Dr. Maro Yoshisato Cavey, who is the Director of Higher Education Partnerships for the National Partnerships for Student Success. After she is done with her segment, I'll turn to a two-person panel. That'll be from Higher Ed, Jilo Tisdale, who is the Director of the Bonner Office of Civic Engagement at Spelman College in Georgia, and Dr. Lori Henry, Dean of the Seidel School of Education at Salisbury University in Maryland. When that segment's done, Lauryn Schuman, a junior at the George Washington University, will be my last guest. A little bit of housekeeping, and thank you all panelists. I'll see you shortly. A little bit of housekeeping. Copy of the deck is going to be in the resource tab for you. An actual recording and all materials will be available in an archive within 24 hours. If you have audio problems, refresh your browser. Post your questions in the Q&A. And I will have time after each of the three segments. I won't pause after mine, but I'll have time after the segment with Mariko for a couple questions, the segment with Jilo and Lori for a couple questions, the segment with Lauren for a couple questions, and then at the end, if you've had a lot of time to digest the nutrient-dense presentation we've got for you, time for any other questions that we weren't able to get to. So that's the order of events, and I guess I'll start now and welcome you all to this call. Appreciate your interest in this subject. So as I said, I started Saga with AJ Gutierrez 10 years ago. We've been helping the country get tutoring right for a long time. In the early years, tutoring, and this was in 2014 and 15, we used federal Title I money to pay for the program. So districts like Chicago, New York, Broward County, Florida, Washington, D.C., they used Title I money to do this. And they got approval from the U.S. Department of Ed. Jim Shelton at the time, the deputy, gave approval to the use of Title I funds as a legitimate source of funding for districts that wanted to put tutoring as a class within the school day. By the way, I've been doing tutoring for 10 years longer than that. The idea of embedding tutoring into a school day happened in 2004 at a school I ran in Boston called the Match School. At that school, AJ Gutierrez was a junior when we first implemented high-dosage tutoring for him and his classmates. He was the one who, 10 years later in 2014, co-founded Saga with me, and we've been together for about 22 years now. Wonderful to see him grow. So the funding source, Title I, has been the major funding source before COVID. Then COVID came, and dollars from federal ESSER and ARP dollars were used by many districts to fund tutoring. Some had state appropriations, others used general funds. Now with the ESSER dollars already obligated and needing to be spent by March of 26 at the latest, districts that want to do tutoring wonder, where can I find the money? Districts also have questions about where do you find the time to do tutoring in the day? Where do you find the people to do tutoring? There's lots of questions. As a nonprofit, we're happy to help answer those questions, and many of the people on this call, particularly the NPSS, are very capable of helping to answer some of those questions. But today we're going to focus on the money question, which I think is the first question districts are asking now. Look, they say we've done it, now we had to end it because ESSER dollars are done, or we haven't done it. We realize we should have done it. Where can we find dollars to do it? There's really a couple sources that are logical, but not as easy for districts to choose. One of them is to repurpose Title I money. Districts receive Title I money now. They can repurpose it on tutoring, which has the strongest evidence it's going to be effective, as compared to some of the expenditures districts use Title I money for that may not have the strong evidence of effectiveness. Districts could take advantage of their general funds, other than federal Title I, general funds. Again, it's hard to for districts to unfund something that's been funded before and to fund something new like tutoring. It's a hard thing to do, I understand that. So we're hoping in today's call you take away that there's additional sustainable federal funding streams that you could look to supplement your budgets, create a new funding stream for tutoring that could last for some time. One topic we won't spend much time on today is the AmeriCorps opportunity. Districts can become AmeriCorps partners. Vendors can be AmeriCorps partners. Saga is an AmeriCorps partner now as a national direct recipient. AmeriCorps gives you a 3-year grant. So if you're a district, you'd apply to your state commission of the AmeriCorps. It could be called a service commission. In some states called volunteer, fill in the blank state. You apply for that. Some of the deadlines for that are very soon, like early January. Some, I've noticed, are in June. So if the deadline is long in the future and you want advice about how to do that application, Saga has capability to offer that to you, to support you for free. America becomes a very interesting funding source because it's federal money, been around 30 plus years, and it's a 3-year award, and it will pay not only for the tutor costs, but for supervisory costs. So America's interesting and appealing. We're happy to help. That's not the subject of today's webinar, though. Today we're on work study, federal work study. This program's been around 60 years. In 2002, when I began my tenure at the Match School in Boston, I said, look, we need tutors to tutor our kids. And the federal law had just been changed at that time to require higher ed institutions to spend 7% of their federal work study dollars on community-based jobs. So I took advantage of that. We were in Boston. I went to MIT and said, look, we want some of your students to be tutors of our kids. Would you do that and dedicate some of your dollars? And MIT said, yes, they would pay up to 75% of the wage for the tutors. I said, terrific. And then I went to Harvard and I said, Harvard, MIT is doing 75%. Would you do 90? And Harvard said they'd do 90. So there's some negotiation involved, and we were very successful in using those college students, some of whom, by the way, became interested in being teachers at our school afterwards. So now the question is, what does a district do if you're in an area where there are colleges? And that's going to be the topic of today's session. You'll hear from the National Partnership for Student Success, which has capacity and resources to help districts in many specific ways. You'll hear from 2 higher ed institutions that use federal work study and AmeriCorps, but we're talking about work study today, to subsidize and provide qualified students to tutor kids in their communities. And you'll hear from one of those students who's been a tutor at George Washington for 3 years and is loving it. So we hope that it'll answer some of your questions, and we're looking forward to the conversation with you. So now I'll call forth Dr. Maro Yoshisato Cavey. She'll present a little deck for you, and then she and I will have a conversation. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Alan, and thank you everyone for having me today. My name is Maro Yoshisato Cavey, and I'm with the National Partnership for Student Success, or NPSS, and we focus on helping the field to recruit, train, and place more people into evidence-based, high-impact P-12 student support roles, both in schools and in out-of-school time settings. So the NPSS is a broad national effort, but in my role as Director of Higher Education Partnerships, I really help colleges and universities to collaborate with districts and nonprofits to engage more college students in NPSS-aligned roles, and I'll get to what those are shortly. Also, Rachel Stowe, pictured on the slide, supports our higher education engagement efforts with a focus on federal work study specifically. We also have a wonderful team based at our NPSS Hub, which is where we provide various forms of implementation guidance and resources to all kinds of organizations working on this shared national issue of supporting youth development. So just quickly zooming out, I want to note that the NPSS was established in 2022, and at that time, the presidential administration had called upon the country to support schools and communities with the goal of getting an additional 250,000 adults recruited, trained, and placed into essential people-powered P-12 student support roles by 2025. So over the past 3 years, the NPSS has been working to support the field in answering that call. And I'm excited to say that goal has not only been met, but exceeded as of this summer, with an estimated 323,000 adults now in these key P-12 student support positions. However, we of course know that there is still much work to be done, and cross-sector partnerships between higher education, districts, and nonprofits are essential to understanding the local needs of communities and implementing people-powered student supports effectively. So the NPSS focuses on 5 evidence-based high-impact roles, which are tutoring, mentoring, success coaching, post-secondary transition coaching, and wraparound and integrated student support coordination. So as you all well know, high-impact tutoring is key, and this is often where organizations start with student support programming. But how can colleges contribute to this work? Well, last year in 2023, the U.S. Department of Education issued a call to action in the form of a Dear Colleague letter, calling on higher ed institutions to increase the percentage of federal work study funds dedicated to community service jobs, specifically in these NPSS-aligned roles like tutoring. Or alternatively, sometimes in addition, colleges and universities can increase community service opportunities for their students through other programs like AmeriCorps, credit-bearing coursework, and all sorts of other pathways to service that support P through 12 students. So why federal work study? Well, it is an existing sustainable funding stream with established infrastructure at many colleges and universities. And while federal work study is managed by financial aid offices, the work of student job placement is often done in collaboration with other offices on campus, such as community engagement, public service, career development, and more. And the federal government covers up to 100% of the student workers' compensation in their job if they're placed in specific literacy or math tutoring roles in critical grade levels. Also, if a college does not utilize all of the federal work study funds, they do not roll over. So those remaining dollars go back to the government. There's definitely incentive to optimize these funds for great community engaged work. Colleges are also required to dedicate at least 7% of their federal work study funds to community service roles. And this mandate was paused from 2019 to 2024 because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but it is now in place beginning with this 2024 to 2025 school year. So colleges are often seeking community partners that are willing to host these federal work study students. Districts are, of course, well positioned to do that. And lastly, there are mutual benefits for college students and P through 12 students. College students are gaining meaningful, community-engaged professional experiences, and P through 12 students are supported to thrive academically and holistically through these great relationships. So how does the NPSS support colleges in answering the call to action in partnership with districts and nonprofits? Well, we established a growing coalition of currently 50 colleges and universities that stepped forward to set public goals to place more of their college students into these P through 12 student support positions. This network is helping one another and their communities to do this work while also helping the NPSS understand the opportunities and challenges of the field. And our diverse coalition includes all types of higher education institutions. And additionally, we facilitate a higher education learning community engaging nearly 80 institutions, as well as their district and nonprofit partners in promising practices for federal work study implementation. The NPSS also provides a variety of no-cost support and resources for colleges, districts, and nonprofits. And in these areas, we focus on strengthening program implementation through one-to-one technical assistance and engaging other experts in the field, such as Saga Education. We also focus on expanding peer networks and engaging in ongoing learning and sharing through various collaborative efforts, such as our Federal Work Study Working Group. So what can this look like in practice? I will just quickly spotlight a great program in action. And the City University of New York and New York City District 26 each came to the NPSS looking to engage college students to support youth in the community and in P through 12 school settings. We were able to support them with initial collaborative calls and implementation planning. And that helped them go forth with piloting a student support program for one semester initially, and then scaling to engage additional federal work study students and school campuses today. So what are the next steps to get involved? How can districts and your current or prospective higher education partners connect? Well, colleges can join our Higher Education Coalition to support each other and connect with peer institutions on federal work study implementation. Districts can join a parallel network called our Supporting Champion Organizations, and that's a large, diverse network of over 200 nonprofits, districts, states, and other organizations working at the national and community level to implement these types of programs. And you can all join our higher education learning community. So this is an inclusive network that meets quarterly with the next call on December 5th. Additionally, we invite everyone to join our Federal Work Study Working Group, which meets monthly. Our next call is on December 12th. And this group connects colleges, districts, and nonprofits that are looking to really delve into federal work study questions together and also develop resources that will support the field. So most recently, we produced a college student-facing resource on the benefits of service to help recruit college students into these roles. And next, we'll be working on producing a federal work-study guide for districts and nonprofits that are looking to partner with colleges. So with all that being said, thank you very much for your time. We welcome you to reach out, visit our website, connect with us via email, and we'd be delighted to collaborate with you and others in your community on this work. Thanks so much.
Marco, thank you for this segment. I'm going to spend a few minutes with you with some follow-up questions. One big attraction, I think, of federal work study as a source of funding for tutors is that the colleges will take care of the HR pieces of this. The district doesn't really need to do any HR function except, of course, attest to the students' hours. Is that right? And how when you've partnered with districts and colleges, what have they thought about that shifting of the HR burden?
Yes, that's such a wonderful question, and definitely a great benefit to community partners hosting federal work study students in these roles. The great thing is that the college manages the hiring, the posting of positions, and the payment and just ongoing support of that federal work study student in the role. Of course, that can occur in collaboration with community partners, so districts have a voice in that as well. But in terms of the administrative burden, that work falls within the college. So I think that's a really wonderful benefit of utilizing these types of resources.
Yeah, I think it would be. Do districts have the final say about whether they want to accept a particular student that the college has recruited?
Yes, absolutely. So districts can also be a collaborator in developing things like job descriptions, conducting interviews, being an active participant in the hiring process. And it can look different depending on the nature of the partnership and your relationship with the college institution. So that type of conversation is what we can help navigate in collaborative dialogues with any districts that might wish to partner with colleges and universities in their regions to figure out kind of what's the reasonable distribution of responsibilities and how might each group like to be involved in the process.
I know that in the country there are about 600,000 college students who, as part of their financial aid package from their university or college, receive this federal work study component. And I know you're working with 50 colleges now. My math would suggest then there's a bigger supply of potential tutors than there's a current demand. Is that the current economics of the situation, that colleges are looking for district partners?
I would say so, Alan. And the learning that we've gathered from our wonderful coalition of 50 and our broader, much broader learning community of institutions doing this work is that there's definitely appetite among college students to serve the community, which is so wonderful. I think this generation is very, very eager to get connected to youth development roles and just engaged locally. So some of our institutions that have launched relatively new programs, even just within the last year, have shared that they've gotten 2 or 3 times the number of applications that they even expected for college students to serve in these roles, which is great. I think it really shows that there's a need to find really meaningful community-based placements for those students with collaborative partners like local districts. That being said, when colleges might be facing challenges with navigating this process, the NPSS Hub is excited to support in thinking about tools and strategies such as those resources we can help develop and our working group that supports one another in issues like recruitment and placement.
Marco, one thing I really have admired as we've gotten closer together is we brought to you some districts that are interested in the question, District of Massachusetts and Florida and Illinois most recently. And you're so clear and helpful to them as they start to think about this. They get very excited about this. One thing they discern pretty quickly is they need a runway here. It's not something they can, it's almost the end of November. If they want work study tutors in January, that might be tough to do, although possible if the number requested is small, But a runway is probably really helpful for a district or a school that wants to have a good number. And what would you say in terms of a runway? How much runway in terms of time might be needed to get a good program underway?
Well, thank you so much, Alan. It's been wonderful to collaborate with you and all those that you work with in these communities across the country. And I would say, the timeline really varies. I think we've worked with a lot of programs that are excited to pilot something a bit smaller initially, explore how that works in collaboration with the district and the college, and then learn from that process to scale up in the future, which I think has been a really successful pathway forward. But it doesn't always need to look that way. A lot of times we find that colleges are already doing this type of work quite well with various programs in the community, and it's not too much of a new lift to try to replicate that work or build upon it to grow existing programs with just additional partners. So engaging a new district, new school sites, and figuring out where the infrastructure already exists for the programming to make it possible to simply connect more federal work-study eligible students to the job opportunities. So that's another pathway forward that might be even a bit faster and easier to get up and running.
And we had one question. Can individual schools take advantage of this opportunity and local nonprofits?
Yes, absolutely. So individual schools, individual community-based nonprofit sites can all host federal work-study students in these student support roles. And if you're interested in learning a little bit more about what some of that work looks like in practice, we have numerous program spotlights on our website. Our Supporting Champions Network convenes to share about their programs regularly and discuss pathways forward based on the goals that they all have in their local regions. So absolutely, the door is open for districts, schools, nonprofits, any organizations interested in engaging college students to do this work in collaboration.
Terrific. So one big takeaway I'd say is that there's federal money that many districts didn't know was there that could come to support college students to become tutors in local schools. And NPSS is your first call to make when you want to try to connect with that opportunity. If districts are on this call, schools are on this call, nonprofits are on this call, I would take advantage of their capability and resources to make this work for you. And I would recommend a good runway. You'll need some time to get this planned for, but it is a very appealing opportunity to not just get good people to work with kids, but to get them subsidized. And if you've got a teacher shortage, to potentially cultivate these college seniors or juniors to potentially become teachers in your districts. Marco, thank you so much. I'll see you at the end of the session.
Thank you so much, Ellen. Really appreciate it.
You'll be sticking around. So now I want to have come off onto camera Jilo Tisdale and Lori Henry, please. Hey, Lori. Looking for Jilo. We only have people from colleges beginning with an S. We have Spelman and we have Salisbury. There you are. Great to see you.
Hi.
So I had you on together because you're both higher ed folks and you have different experiences with work-study students becoming tutors. So I thought it'd be interesting for the audience to hear about your different experiences. So maybe each of you take this initial question about how many students subsidized by work study in this year, or if you have data from last year, participated in supporting local schools. So just an estimate. I've just got a sense of the size, how big of a number it is at your colleges. So Laura, you want to start with that and then Jill?
Sure, I can start with that. So here at Salisbury University, just to give you a little bit of context, Salisbury is located on the eastern shore of Maryland, which is a very rural area. A lot of migrant farm workers in this region, a lot of agriculture, as well as poultry industry. So it's kind of the broader setting for us. So we currently have 3 federal work-study students working with a local high school. And it's a high school that is a career technical education high school. So it's an opportunity for our education majors who don't typically get a clinical placement in a CTE high school, the opportunity to really see what it's like to teach in that kind of a setting. So they're working as kind of instructional assistants in the classroom and helping teachers out with their instructional work.
Super. And Jilo, how big is this at Spelman?
Okay, so Spelman is located in Atlanta, Georgia, so a pretty urban area. We have about 80 students that are working in partnership with our local schools.
Wow, so this is very interesting. We've got rural America and urban America represented. Huh? I wonder if that was accidental or if I meant that intentionally. So it's really great to hear because I wanted the audience to really see themselves in this possibility. Jilo, I know you have a lot of kids. Are you providing transportation for them, or do they have a reasonable public transportation option in Atlanta? And same question for you, Lori.
We do provide transportation for them. The public transportation system in Atlanta isn't as streamlined as what you might find in DC or in New York. And so in order to make sure that all of the students are arriving at the same time, to minimize disruptions to the school environment, to the public school environment, and to make sure that they can get back to campus in a timely fashion to resume their studies, we do provide transportation. It helps immensely with our accountability for.
Lori, did Jilo freeze for you?
She did.
Okay, so I'm going to finish her sentence.
Jilo, please refresh your browser if you can hear me.
Jilo, you can, yeah. So while she was talking about it creates better accountability because they can keep track of the kids who are getting on the bus and getting to the school and coming back. I hope she'll be back momentarily. Lori, how about you, rural district? How do the kids get to the district?
Yeah, so we also must provide transportation because we don't have mass transit here. We do have some very small city bus lines, but they're not going out to our schools. So we do provide transportation from the university. So we have our mascot is Sammy the Seagull. So we have Sammy buses that are wrapped with Sammy the Seagull. They are passenger buses that seat about 22. We have several of our classes, our foundations classes, are actually taught on site at our partner schools. And so this particular CTE school where these 3 federal work study students are is where one of those foundations courses is actually held. So they're able to jump on the bus with the students in that class and the faculty members, and they ride out to the school. They do their hours there, and then we transport them back to campus.
Now, does the college pay for that transportation?
Yes, the university pays for it.
Terrific. Another appealing thing. So I would ask you and Jilo, if she gets back on, what kind of students want to become tutors in schools? You have just a few. Jilo has, I think, 80. What's the profile of students who are doing this work?
Yeah, so we have several different tutoring opportunities for SU students. The federal work study students who are placed in the high school are education majors, and it's an opportunity for them to just get additional clinical hours and learn more about the different school settings. As an example, one of them is a math education major, so plans on being a high school math teacher. And being able to see math instruction within the context of a career tech pathway is very different than you would see in a more traditional high school where students might be preparing for an AP math class or doing a dual credit course for a university. So those 3 federal work study students are all education majors. We also have a very robust AmeriCorps program here at SU, and so we have teacher candidates as well as students from across all majors on the campus who are working in schools as tutors as well, and that really runs the gamut. We have had about 165 AmeriCorps students in the last 2 years, and that through that program, they received $250,000 in tuition assistance. So a lot of times the profile of these students are first generation. They're students that have financial need, and this helps supplement their tuition assistance.
You said 250,000. That's cumulative, not per student, I'm assuming.
Correct.
Okay, every student getting 250,000 assistance. That would be a very delicious program.
It would be at Yale.
Lori, one of the questions asked, who's responsible for doing the background checks or paying for the fingerprinting on the students? Yeah. Is that the college or the partner?
We provide that service through the university. So our university police department does all fingerprinting and background checks. And then we have a really robust school partnership with over 40 schools across 7 counties. And so they really rely on us to provide that information to them. Again, being in a rural area, as we move students around to give them different opportunities in different school settings, we're able to transfer that record from our university police over to their HR division.
Gotcha. I know you just have a few in the work study, and they're all education majors, which answers one question. I wonder if you know generally, there's lots of opportunities for students in work study to do some off-campus research lab or other community-based partners. How does tutoring compete with that? Or does tutoring have its own niche in that, in your case, is the ed department kids?
Yeah, I think for us, one of the reasons we have so few is we just don't have the capacity. Just the profile that we have for federal work study is pretty low. Our Pell Grant eligibility, so it's tied to the federal financial dollars, is pretty low profile, and so we don't have as many federal work-study students here on campus as larger institutions in a more urban setting.
Gotcha. Jilo, I know you're on the phone. So sorry you lost internet, but can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
So good. Speak, I think, a little louder. It's not as good a connection as what was your internet connection. Jilo, one question I had particularly for you was about how this looks from the college perspective in terms of the connection of kids to school and how they've reported back to you about their experience. Tell us a little bit about that.
So for our students, they are in cohorts, and they are in cohorts by the type of program that they are working through. So some of our students are part of a service scholarship program, and so they are in that cohort, and they have monthly meetings, and they have requirements for reflection and other types of reporting, even outside of their monthly meetings. And then some of our students are engaged through a literacy-based program. Those students also, they travel together, they meet together, and they meet with their program manager once a month. And those monthly meetings really take the form of both an opportunity to guide students through some reflection about what they're experiencing in the schools and the impact they're making, but they also give us an opportunity to continue their educational process. We want students to have information about the community. We want them to have information about the field. We want them, if it's a literacy program, we want them to know about the issues of literacy at large, and then specifically within the community where they are. These meetings also provide an opportunity for us to invite community leaders in to talk with students. We're very aware all the time that we want students to have an asset-based approach to our engagement with the community, even though they are going into the community to provide support in a particular area. It's important to us that they also sit in a learning role in relation to community. So inviting community leaders in to lead workshops with students, we feel helps to enforce that.
And Jilo, first you and then Lori. Jilo, when we did a talk a couple of weeks ago, you talked about how you sometimes go to observe the tutoring. I wonder, Jilo, in your case and Lori's case, who's providing coaching and support to the tutors, not on the logistics, but on their tutoring methodology, for example? So Jilo first and then Lori?
Yes. So I do go to visit the schools and maintain a relationship with the administrators in the schools. Each school identifies a primary contact person who often isn't the principal, but may be a classroom teacher or a media specialist. And we have program managers and coordinators at Spelman. So I visit at least once a semester, but a coordinator or program manager is visiting weekly and making sure that the programs are being implemented with fidelity. They're the person, if students observe something that they are concerned about, they bring that information back to us to take to the school administration. We really try to provide student support in managing what they may see, what concerns they may have, or observations they may make, because they have limited information, and we encourage them not to diagnose students, but if they have concerns, to bring those to us. And we provide feedback to students on their delivery of the program, on their interaction with the students that they work with, the community members they're in contact with, both there in the field, and then we follow up on those things when they have their monthly meetings.
Gotcha. How about you, Lori?
Yes, so we have a faculty member who runs a literacy clinic here on campus. And so we do the initial training on best practices in tutoring that really focuses in on kind of the high dosage, individualized instruction, and really, using those evidence-based strategies, providing frequent feedback to the tutors as well. And then once they're kind of out in the field, working with the mentor teacher has had some training in coaching models, and so they're doing the coaching on site.
Got it. Just a little commercial message here. It's just a short one. Saga's been asked by many districts to do that pre-service training for the tutors, the college students who go in, and to come and observe on some regular basis as the tutoring is delivered and identify program strengths and weaknesses. Last question for both of you. Do the students who are being tutored, I know your college students are students too, but I'm talking about the younger ones being tutored, are they celebrating when their tutor comes in? Do they feel real connection with the college student? Does it seem kind of strange to them? What's the word you hear from your tutors? Lori, why don't you start with that?
Sure. The children that work with our tutors are really excited to have them there. Our tutors right now are working in high schools, and so they're working with students that can now start to see themselves transitioning to college. They are at CTE high schools, and so they may have thought at one point that college wasn't for them, but after working with the tutors, they're starting to think more about college and other opportunities that they might have when they graduate high school.
Exciting. Jilo, you're superhuman. You've fixed the internet at the entire year of college. I love that.
I'm persistent. If nothing else, I am persistent.
You are certainly persistent. So what's it like for the young kids that the tutors are tutoring? How are they feeling?
They really celebrate them. I mean, they really look forward to it. And one of the things that I overhear the Spelman students say to other students who may be new to the program is, you have to show up because the K-12 students are looking for you, right? And when I'm there visiting, I can see it's almost a magic between them. Like, you really see the younger students looking forward to the older students coming. We've had teachers comment that it impacts attendance, that on those days when they're going to have their tutoring sessions, some students who may have chronic absences are more likely to be present. We like to think that maybe the tutors being there plays a role in that. And it's the same level of excitement and the same celebration happens on the college student side. I mean, they begin almost within the first week of referring to the younger students as my student. I'm going to see my student, or, I have something new to share with my student. So I think there's a strong attachment, excitement between the students on both sides.
Thank you. It's a wonderful way to end this. It feels so. I feel so heartwarmed by hearing this, because I helped create this idea in a public school, first time in a public school in 2002, and then with full-time folks in 2004. And it's just the same experience in Boston. Kids would say, that's my tutor down the hall. The tutor would say, that's my kid.
Yeah.
Thank you both so much. I'll see you at the last segment for group questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan.
And now, Lauryn Schuman, would you come onto camera? There's an actual college student here. Her name is Lauryn Schuman. She's a junior at George Washington University. The George Washington University. I'm an alum of their law school. Lauryn, tell us a little bit about you. And I know you've been doing tutoring in schools since you were a freshman. So tell us about your journey.
Yeah, so coming into George Washington, I applied for the Math Matters program here and have been serving with them ever since. I am a federal work study tutor, and I started out as a regular tutor tutoring at DCPS middle schools, and then my sophomore year, I became a lead tutor, and I've been serving in that position ever since.
And I know you don't want to be a teacher. You want to do something else like education policy.
Yes.
So was that your idea when you came to GW, or did you start to form that based a little bit by the experience you were having?
I've always known that I've wanted to go into law of some sort, and then staying involved with the Math Matters program kind of sparked my interest in either juvenile justice or education policy moving forward.
And tell us a little bit about the logistics. You tutor how many hours a week? How do you get to the school? Do you get course credit for your time? All that.
Yeah, so I currently serve at a Metro accessible site. So I am taking public transportation with the other tutors during my session to the site. There are some sites that aren't accessible by Metro, so those tutors take a lift that's provided by the program to those sites. We are compensated through our federal work study program through travel time, and we go twice a week, and our sessions are anywhere from 45 to 60 minutes each time.
And I know you applied in the summer for that job. Did you have other jobs that you looked at? And if you did, why did you pick this particular job?
Yeah, it was between this and then just your average desk job, federal work study position. Decided to go with this just because it aligned with my interests and seemed a little more exciting than scanning students into a building.
Really? Okay, that's good to hear. That's a low standard to compare it to. Has it met your expectations? So. Has it met your expectations or exceeded your expectations?
It's definitely exceeded my expectations. I love my job. I love being able to do what I do.
And how many kids do you call my kids?
Right now I have 3, but I have had 4 different groups of students since the beginning.
And do you tutor one at a time, or do you tutor in a group of 3?
We do small group tutoring, so I'm tutoring 3 kids at a time.
Yeah, how is that? It's, for a lot of people think that tutoring is one-on-one. I have a strong view that one-on-one should be the exception. It's not the optimal use of the adult's time. Kids often don't like to have so much attention on them. It's helpful for kids to collaborate and do peer-to-peer work. But from the ground level, like, I don't know if you'd been a tutor before, if you had much training, but how hard is it to tutor 3 kids at a time?
I find it more enjoyable to have more students in a group than one. I think with one, it like you said, students tend to kind of get overwhelmed. They're not that into it, but when they have students their age that are around, it's helpful. I try to incorporate the small group aspect as much as I can. I'll bring whiteboards and I'm like, okay, explain this to your friend, or see what you can do with this. And kind of having that emphasis on teaching each other as opposed to just being taught is really helpful in the small group setting.
Totally. That's one of the secrets of effective tutoring that you've discovered by your junior year of college that some tutors don't discover for a while. You have a really positive personality, so don't be immodest. What else do you think you bring to the table when you're tutoring kids besides your knowledge of the subject and your positive attitude?
I think the main thing and what's really important to me is the relationship building. I think everything is downstream of that, and that's always what I place an emphasis on when I enter the session, is making sure that the kids trust me and know that I trust them. And once you kind of foster that environment of inclusivity, everything else comes naturally.
And there are a lot of other kids at GW who do tutoring in the schools. Are nearly all of them ed school people or think about education? Are some of them? What's your sense of the pool of students at GW?
It is a huge spread of having an interest in education, not so much, across majors and colleges and disciplines. We really have a large array of interests and personalities.
Why do you think some of them who are not going to be teachers want to do this work anyway?
It's fun. It really is a good time to go out to the schools, meet these students, and have an enjoyable time. I think that's the main draw, even if you're not necessarily interested in entering the education field.
Super. Lauryn, thank you. Stay on, and I'm calling back all the other panelists. Questions? So they'll all pop on now. There we go. Jilo still got internet connection. Laurie, good to see you again. Marco, you're there. So we have time here for some questions. There are a number of questions that came in, and whomever has the answer, jump in and give the answers. Question, can tutoring be provided online? I think I know part of that answer. I'll start part of that answer. There are some colleges and districts that are fine with that. Some colleges or districts that are not fine. I think it varies by the college and by the district. Anyone have a different piece of information on that one? Marco?
No, I'd echo that, Alan. I think it's important for this work to respond to the needs of the community. And I know there are various approaches to doing this, both in person and virtually. So definitely area for innovation there. And I think responsiveness to local needs.
Yeah, and Jilo?
We have done both at Spelman. We've done virtual and also primarily in person. We find that most of our school partners prefer in person. The only disadvantage we found to in person is we can't cover as broad a geography. And so we have had some schools that are too far away for us to get there in person to request virtual services.
Thanks. Another question, much of the evidence for high dose, I'm just reading this. Much of the evidence for high dosage tutoring recommends that tutoring should be consistent and at least 3 times a week. And by the way, for at least half an hour per session. Is this what is happening? Are your tutors able to meet this recommendation? And I think college folks on the call would have part of that answer, because you actually don't know if the kids are getting other tutoring from somebody else in the times that your students aren't going. But anybody have an answer to that? I know, Lauryn, I think you do tutoring twice a week.
We do, and we do high dosage tutoring twice a week for with high school students, 45 minutes a session. In the summertime, we do more intensive. So we do provide tutoring in the summer, and then it's an hour a day every day for about a 3-week to 4-week period. Got it.
Anyone else on this question? And Lauryn, I was mentioning you. I think you tutor twice a week yourself. How long are your sessions?
Yes. Anywhere from 45 to 60 minutes.
There you go. Okay. Looking for more questions here. Let's see. I asked about, someone asked if a school district doesn't take advantage of this, can a school or a nonprofit take advantage of college federal work study students? Marco, you've got a smile on your face. I think you want to answer that one.
Oh, yes, I'm happy to jump in here. Absolutely. Yes, a school, a nonprofit, a district, any community-based partner can host federal work study students. The process is essentially to become established as an off-campus employer, essentially going through the college's process of sort of vetting, so to speak, the places where their college students are going to be working in the community, even though the college itself can manage the HR processes for federal work study students. So that process of becoming an off-campus employer can look slightly different from institution to institution, but often it goes through employer engagement offices or career development offices, in some cases financial aid. If it's hard to figure out kind of where to start, then the NPSS is happy to jump in and support with kind of identifying potential offices to connect with and even helping to facilitate some initial conversations about what an off-campus employer situation might look like.
Got it. And can a tutoring company, someone asks, apply to be a partner with a federal work study program? I think the answer is yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Not for profit, for profit, doesn't matter?
That's correct. And if there are some nuances to how federal work study is applied depending on each situation. However, if you're interested in getting a really broad sense of the types of organizations that are doing this work, you are welcome to take a look at our Supporting Champions page on the National Partnership for Student Success website. It includes a host of all sorts of different types of tutoring organizations and other P through 12 support organizations that are hosting federal work study students and others in these roles.
Super. Anyone want any last word? Lauryn, anything you want to close with?
Nothing off the top of my head, just this is an amazing opportunity for students to stay involved in their community off the college campus, and it's certainly something that I'm thankful for, that I was able to expand my view of DC beyond just the GW campus.
Super. And Lauryn?
So I just want to respond to a question that I think popped up about data that shows the effectiveness of tutoring based on grades, attendance, et cetera. And I think Lauryn already mentioned, right, the attendance rates tend to be higher when students have tutors. There is research that also shows positive impacts on test scores, graduation rates, post-secondary enrollment rates. As I was talking about, our tutors become mentors for the high school kids. And so definitely have positive impacts through the tutoring.
Thank you. And people could also get, I think we have research on 18 studies. Saga's had 10 randomized trials. You could write to me on the screen email address, and I can send you links to those. And Jilo, you get the last word today.
I would just take this opportunity to say that it really is a wonderful opportunity, both for colleges and school districts and individual schools. And there is some, there's some administrative red tape that has to be worked out, and it is an extra effort to make sure that you're keeping communication channels open, but it's totally worth it. I mean, what comes out of it, both in terms of college student learning and the gains that we see for our elementary and middle school students is amazing, and one of the most satisfying projects that I work on in terms of being able to really see the effort I put in is having real gains in real time. So I highly recommend it.
Thank you. And Marco, we've had a few questions in the chat, and the questions about, is there an easy way to find out which colleges can be potential partners? I think that answer is is there a searchable database of colleges that receive federal work study? That would be the place that somebody could do the research in. Are you aware of such a database?
Well, I don't know that there's necessarily a searchable database. However, you can probably guess that most institutions in your region, especially if they're public institutions, but also private institutions, receive some amount of federal work study funds. Oftentimes the question is how much, and that can be complex depending on each student's financial aid award, and I don't think the partners as much need to be involved in those nuances. But if helpful, we at the NPSS are happy to take a look at data from the Department of Ed, which is public, but it can be a lot to sort through, to figure out what the federal work-study allocation looks like for colleges in your area, specifically how much of those funds are going to community service roles and literacy and math tutoring specifically. And that can really help us get a good sense of maybe promising potential partners and places that might already be showing some initiative and investment in community service roles for their college students. Likewise, if maybe they're not doing that work quite yet, we're happy to help encourage them to increase the percentage of federal work-study funds in collaboration with you as a district, a school, a nonprofit that's willing to host those students, because I think that piece can also be a common hurdle for colleges trying to figure out where to place these eager young people.
Very good. Thank you all for your participation on the conversation. I guess another takeaway here is that NPSS, Marco, is really the quarterback that you want to contact if you're a potential partner or if you're a local college. We do some of the blocking and tackling once arrangements are made in terms of helping to train tutors and help program implementation and effectiveness. So thank you all. Thank you to our attendees. And again, in the Resource Center, you'll be able to find the download of the deck. Within 24 hours, going to the same registration site, you can get a recording of this call. And if you have any questions, follow up. We provided the email addresses in the deck. Thank you, everybody. Take care.